Looking for ways to leverage the power of Amazon's book-selling platform to reach even more readers than ever? Consider creating an Amazon brand store. Not sure what that is or how to do it? Join the party. This is The Writer's Journey. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Moore, and here with me is the beauteous Kayleen Williams. And tonight we're asking Richard Hummel, the creator of Amazon's Lit RPG store, exactly how he put his store together and how you can do it too. Okay, everyone, welcome to the show. Hi. Oh, Kayleen, you're muted. We can't hear you. You are.
I'm going to interrupt you. You might be able to hear me. I cannot hear anything that is going on right now, so I'm going to mute and try and fix this. I will be back.
Okay, you fix it while Richard will tell us who he is, what he writes, and why his fans love him so much.
All right. Well, I'll reserve judgment on the last part for my fans, right? All right. So Richard Hummel, I've been writing since November of 2017. So I'm a relatively new writer. Published my first book exactly 1 year later. So I've got 2 books out. Third book is in the works. But we have a 1-year-old who pretty much monopolizes all of our time. 3 kids is a lot.
Yes.
So 2 kids, I could do it. I could wake up at 4 a.m. I could write for a couple of hours. But when you've got 3, you just all the sleep you need is precious. So yeah, it makes a big difference. I kind of write like a mashup. As much as I like the lit RPG genre, and that's kind of where I got started and where I got the inspiration. My own book is actually more game-lit. It's got game mechanics, but it's in a post-apocalyptic world with some dystopian and fantasy / sci-fi elements thrown in. So it's kind of a big mashup, and I know it's kind of risky when you mash stuff together, but according to most of the fans and the reviews that I've got, the mashup works. And so it's basically introducing a lot of this kind of cyberpunk elements into a post-apocalyptic world that has mutant creatures, that has dragons, and you have advanced technology like nanotechnology that enables the game-like features. And so that's kind of what I write, and it's a little bit of something that I wanted to read. When I started reading, I probably read 400 or 500 different lit RPG books, and there was a bunch of different ideas I had. There was things I wanted to see in books that weren't there. So I'm like, well, you know what, whatever. So Dawn Chapman actually is the one that said, why don't you just write it? So she got me pushed into some writer groups, and that's where it all started. So you can actually, if you look at the day I joined my first writer group on Facebook, is a day after I started writing for the first time. So that's kind of how the journey took place for me. So
which writer groups really helped you a lot?
So initially it was the Gamelit Writer Society, led by Blaze Corbin. And then his group of admins and moderators. So that's kind of where I got started. Obviously, there's been a number of groups since then. And then obviously Keystroke Medium, I've been part of you guys' group now for several months. So yeah, that's where I would say I got most of the start. Though in reality, most of the help and kind of the guidance and critiquing that I got happened in smaller Discord channels or direct PMs with various folks. My editing team at Shimra Editing did a phenomenal job teaching me how to do different things. I mean, I'm not a fiction writer. In fact, when I started writing in 2017, that's the first time I ever wrote fiction. So I'm a technical writer. I write scientific papers for cyber threat intel, reverse engineering malware and code. That's basically what I've written up to that point. And so the whole delving into dialogue and how to write sensory, like it was all new to me. You can see like from book 1 to book 2, you can see progress. And even book 3, as I'm writing it, I'm realizing it takes longer to write because now I'm incorporating all the sensory stuff before my editors get it. And so it's just been a journey, and it's been a fun journey.
Wow, so you're taking their feedback and you're kind of thinking it through, and it's slowing you down, but it's also, it's making the book stronger.
Absolutely, yeah.
That is cool. Well, your fans love it. Minaz Lodi says, I love Richard Hummel's Radioactive Evolution series, waiting for book number 3.
Yes, sorry, Minaz, I don't know when that's going to happen, but I'm slowly working on it. So I can tell you right now, the first 6 chapters are non-stop action. So when it does come out, you're going to have a blast. So.
Well, you can blame it on your cute baby son, and everyone will just love him anyway. So
sounds good.
It all works. So what came first, writing in Lit RPG or creating the store?
So the store just kind of came about on accident. So basically, I like to experiment. I have the luxury here that writing for me is a complete hobby. So any profits that I make go back into marketing, back into different things, testing. I've tried pretty much every single paid for advertising service that's out there for books. I've done ads. I've done like thousands of different ads, testing, and really like 80% of all profit that I've made. And my books did pretty well. I've invested back into the brand and testing and different things. And so I have a pretty good corpus of knowledge on like what happens. And so same thing with Amazon. Anytime there's a new feature, Michael Chatfield every now and then will be like, hey, have you checked this out? So I'll go and do some research and basically sign up for everything. So what came about with the store is actually, I was poking around with Amazon brand registries, something that was relatively new because it used to be called A stores. They used to have affiliate stores where you could basically list it. You could list products and you could get affiliate money by driving customers there. Amazon realized people were gaming that for their own customer base and things like that. So they got rid of A stores and in comes brand stores. And so I didn't know really what it was at first. And I tried registering for it and it's like, oh, you can't actually register. You have to have a trademark. And so I'm like, well, I don't have a trademark. How do I do a trademark? And so then that started kind of the research because this is something that I wanted. I couldn't do it. So I was going to figure out how to do it. And the whole process takes a very long time. I will say that if you do have a registered brand already, you could literally go and create an Amazon store right now. But you have to have a valid trademark with the USTPO, US Trademark Office. And so in order to do it as myself, as an author, as a publisher, you can get what's called a publisher's mark. And so when you're actually going through and you're looking through all of them, you might realize like, oh man, I have to actually apply for like 6 or 7 different trademarks. But the reality is you don't. There's one trademark out there called publisher's mark that encompasses everything there is to do with books, publishing books, distributing books, selling books. And so basically, if you go there, you could just Google search USTPO and publisher's mark, and it'll tell you exactly what it is. And there's 2 different ways that you can actually get a trademark. One can just be text-based, which I will tell you text-based is kind of hard because there's a lot of words that cannot be trademarked. I know some of you probably are aware of what happened in the whole romance genre about words, like the cocky gate or whatever they're calling it.
Right.
So there's a lot of back and forth with lawyers and this and that. And really most people would recommend you get a lawyer to help get your trademark. But being me, I decided I wanted to do it on my own. And so I basically started out by going to one of those freelance websites, Upwork, and I wanted a logo. So I got myself a logo, which is my Hummel Books publisher's brand. I ended up finding an awesome artist to do, a graphic designer to do this. And I mean, the logo turned out more than I could have hoped for. And it was relatively inexpensive. So I did that. I got the colors that I wanted to and basically submitted my first application for USTPO. That basically sat for 6 months. Nothing happened, no movement whatsoever. Finally, it got assigned, and then it was kind of rapid fire. And basically, the attorney or whoever it was that had gotten hold of it said, yeah, this doesn't work. And they kicked it back. And I'm like, well, why doesn't it work? There was no explanation. There was no nothing. Just said that I had to modify my mark and my sample. And so you have 2 different things you have to do. You have to have your mark, and then you have to have the sample. So the mark itself is going to be exactly how it's supposed to look and be. That includes all of the colors, the design itself, the background colors, anything that is going to be part of your trademark. And then,
logo, right?
I'm sorry?
The logo, right?
It is the logo, yes, but it can't just be like a PNG. You can't just have the logo itself. You actually have to have what it's going to be on. So if it's going to be like on your book spine and the spine of your book is brown, then you have to, if you're going to do a colored version of your trademark, you actually have to specify that it's this logo with a gold king, a dragon on a brown background. And then when you actually submit your sample, it has to actually show what it's going to look like on the markets, on the specimen. And so it was basically back and forth. At some point, the lawyer and I just got on a phone call and we hashed it back and forth. She's like, so this is exactly what you want. And it was all legal mumbo jumbo, right? So she wanted me to say it a certain way. I didn't want to say it that way, but it meant the same thing. And so finally I was like, you know what, just do what makes sense, whatever works. This is what I want to use it for, and then submit it. So then about 3 weeks later, I finally got the trademark. So the whole process took between 10 to 12 months. And so as soon as I got that TM number, I went to Amazon, I registered my brand, and boom, I had a store.
Wow.
So it was super simple. Within 3 hours, they had approved it. And then ever since then, I've basically just been signing up for a bunch of different things on how to do these things. And I'll walk you guys through the store, all of the different things that you guys can do. And I'll also even show you some of the metrics, because I think that's really important as authors, to understand exactly what you can do here. Now, I want to caveat everything here that I make $0 from any of this. I could be using this for my own brand. I could be using it for my own books, but I have chosen to use this for the community. And so everything you see here, all of the dollar amounts, it is not my books. It's predominantly going to be books that are on the homepage that have been advertised with banners. And yeah, there's no affiliate, there's no nothing. In fact, I asked Amazon if there was a way to use affiliate links. And they basically said, if I try to monetize this store, I will be banned from the Amazon stores. So
wow. So not even affiliate links.
Absolutely no way to monetize this store, which is why most people use it for their own brand, because then if people do buy from it, then they're getting profit on their actual product pages, but not through the store itself. So.
Yeah, looking at it, it had all the different lit RPG, different subcategories lined up, and it looked like you kind of curated the books to put them on there. And they all looked they looked high quality. The covers looked fantastic. I didn't get to like read each one, but they looked like you spent time going through each one. It looked like a newsletter on steroids, actually.
Yeah, and so the cool thing is I didn't do any of that. The only thing, and I'm going to show you this, but Amazon does all of the design, the layout, and everything themselves. All I have to do is take an ASIN, input the number, and then it populates it on its own. So it's super simple to do. You can customize it pretty much any which way you want. You can add marquees with images and videos. You can do book trailers. There's any number of things that you can do on it. And so and I'll walk you through all of those. So I mean, I can pause here if anybody has any questions, or if you want, I can go straight into a screen share and we can dive in.
Well, one question I think people want to know before we see it, and we want to see it, is, okay, so it sounds like a lot of work, a lot of time, and you can't monetize it. So what is the payoff? What's the return on investment?
The hope is that as Amazon eventually recognizes the lit RPG genre, and hopefully they use the store as kind of a template to figure out how you categorize these books. Because I mean, let's face it, we're talking like thousands, if not tens of thousands of books at this point, between audio, paperback, Kindle, and every single lit RPG book has often random genres. You'll see bestseller tags on some of these books and you're like, wait a minute, why is it in that genre? Because that makes no sense to me. And the reality is like a lot of times there's no categories to throw some of these books into. And so you choose what fits best. And sometimes with the lit RPG, you put it like TV, video game, and movie adaptions, or put it into like mage gaming or something like that, right? Where, yeah, I guess you could shoehorn it in there, but it's not really the right category. And you don't also want to just throw it into like epic fantasy, because then you're competing with the likes of like George R.R. Martin and various Tolkien, right? And like your name isn't there, so you don't have that ability to compete in that category, which means you never get a bestseller tag. And so it basically pushes people to do these random genres in these categories in order to get the bestseller tags, because that really increases sales. If we had the proper categories for these, that would be a moot thing. People would actually be able to put them in categories that make sense, that people can navigate to, click through, find them. And that's kind of the whole idea of the layout of the store. So if you look at the top, you see all of the different categories. And those are kind of root categories. So you have your homepage, you have your pre-orders, and then you have VR, which is virtual reality. So most of the lit RPG, when it first came over to America, was brought over by Russian authors. So Vasily Mahanenko, D. Russ. Actually, D. Russ was the first guy that I read. He has a series called Play to Live. And he did an Indiegogo to translate his books to English. And so that was where I got the start. And ever since then, I've basically been a voracious reader of it. They're the guys that brought lit RPG over from Russia. And so there's other books that have been published in America that kind of follow the same theme, but lit RPG as a term, as a genre, wasn't really recognized until the Russians brought it over. And then since then, now you have, I mean, authors everywhere, hundreds of books, hundreds of series. And so it's really exploded. And so the VR basically is where it got started. So virtual reality, massively multiplayer online role-playing games. It's a mouthful. But that's typically the core or the original lit RPG. you have a real world, and then you have characters that go into this immersive virtual reality that then you're basically in the game world at that point, right? But you have two distinct worlds, right? You have your real life and you have your game world. And then that started to morph into what people call Portal, in which case they're physically transported to a different world or a different dimension that includes game mechanics. So good examples of that would be like The Land from Aileron Kong, or Delver's LLOC from Blaise Corbin. These are books where the characters are literally physically transported by gods of the game world, in whether it's like a competition or if they're just transporting people over as sadistic pleasure, like in Delver's. That's basically how those Portal work. And then there's a couple of other categories that were in between. Like, how do you figure these out? So I was working with Andrew Rowe, and we were talking about kind of what happens if game mechanics are just intrinsically part of a world. What if there's no portaling? What if there's no actual game you log into? And so we came up with this term of game world, in which case like the world itself is governed by games. And so that's game world, and then you have all of your different categories under that, like fantasy and sci-fi. But then there's other categories like altered reality, because what happens if it's the real world and aliens from outer space come and implement some sort of system or game onto the human population? So that's kind of where mine doesn't have aliens, but the whole idea of nanotechnology coming into the real world that gamifies things. Dave Wilmar, Shadow Sun, aliens basically come and they incorporate the world into their own system and basically implement RPG mechanics. And so that's kind of like an altered reality. You also have different things that the Russians are doing, where you have RPG in the real world, and so they call it real world RPG. And this is basically you're living your everyday life, but now you're seeing heads-up displays, and you're able to increase your personal stats. And you read a book on cooking, and your cooking stat increases. Think of like The Sims, right? So there's game mechanics there. So there's all kinds of different ones, but there's every single one of them can be traced back to kind of a root. Like, what is the trope, the core trope of that thing? And so that's why I've classified all of these across the top as like kind of your key areas that you would focus in, because some people like the Portal world, some people like the real world and the game world. And so I want people to be able to go to that and say, oh, I prefer these types. Now let me see what's in there. Well, okay, now I'm a fantasy guy. So I like the VR stuff, but I also like fantasy. So now I can look through my subcategories and I can see, okay, here's VR, here's fantasy, and now here's a whole slew of books that fit my preferred categories. And so that's the idea of how I've arranged the store.
So, like, what I'm hearing, especially for like a lot of different authors who might not have like the same thing, they don't really have a category for their book, you can almost create that for people, which is simultaneously, if you get enough traction in that store, it's going to get Amazon's attention. You know, they're going to be like, hey, we need to start looking at A, this author, especially if you're tailored to your own brand, and B, what kind of genre is drawing all these people to this store that popped up. So that would be a huge benefit for a lot of indies out there, especially if you're struggling with finding, you know, that right place. It's a little bit of sci-fi, it's a little bit of fantasy. If you can get through, from what I heard, through how to get the store set up and approved, you know, you get through those, jump through those hoops, then, I mean, I like that.
Yeah, and I've created, I think in the past 2 weeks, I've created 3 new categories of things that I didn't have before. So a book comes out and like wuxia, or like basically kind of like the Japanese style cultivation novels. Some of those incorporate game mechanics. So like I'm actually reading through one right now from Ellen Kerr, The Reborn Apocalypse. And his is basically, it's game mechanics, but they're basically in a post-apocalyptic world. And it's this cultivation blend of lit RPG. And so there wasn't really something that I didn't have wuxia in the Portal, right? I just had Portal, I had fantasy, I had post-apocalyptic, but this is more of a cultivation novel. And so I had to create a category for Portal and wuxia. And so now you can actually go there and you can see all these things. And so like there's a lot of different categories like that I've created. One of the ones that I'm kind of like on the fence of is like, I've got a harem category, because the harem is like a really big deal in that RPG. But underneath that, you're limited, right? Because there's reverse harem, there's adult themes that don't have harems. But I wanted to limit all the adult titles into one area so that it's not just pervasive across the site, because there's a lot of readers that don't like to look at the covers, that don't like to read about them. And so then you have this like trying to figure out like what a good balance is across these different things. But the reality is like the options are really unlimited for me to be able to create different categories, which is pretty awesome.
Well, it sounds like all of those books getting lost in the sea of Amazon, they find a home here in this one little
That's the
pool.
hope.
Then when readers find that little pool, they can find all the excellent books that they want to read. And maybe one author's book will bring those readers to see other authors' books. Well, let's see the site and let's see it in action.
Right, do it. Let me share. So I will share the actual store itself in case people haven't seen. I know the link was shared, but let's do that first. Let's see.
It's amazon.com/litrpg in case anyone's out there.
In fact, the lit RPG is a vanity URL. So if you navigate to some of these other URLs, actually, I'm going to do it really quick. So just look at the actual URL bar up the top here. You can see it's just kind of random, right? It's just like gobbledygook. It's not specific. But you can actually go to Amazon and you can say, hey, I want a vanity URL. And then you can actually get what you want. And so that's how I got LitRPG. And so it only works to navigate to the homepage, which I mean is fine, right?
No, it's great.
Exactly. It's something that anybody can remember. In fact, if you go and search Amazon LitRPG on Google, or if you search any of the small press or publishers that are on here, or any of the titles in Google, almost always on the first page of search results, you're going to find the store. Which is awesome because the ranking is phenomenal for this. And so people searching for it can easily kind of stumble upon it. So, I talked about these different categories up here. So you can see them, like here's the one I didn't really cover was dungeon. So this includes like dungeon crawls, dungeon core, anything that has to do with kind of a dungeon. But I also have all the audiobooks, and they're all alphabetical by the different narrators. And you'll see that the narration list for LitRPG books is just massive. And so like if there's a specific narrator that you prefer, you can go in here. And one thing to point out here is that every single book on this site is either at the request of the author themselves, the narrator, or the small press publisher. Not a single one of these did I add without first talking to one of the authors, because this is their product. I am not selling it. I am not representing it as their brand. So it is completely up to them if they want to keep it here, if they want to add it, so on and so forth. I have reached out to many of the authors myself to say, hey, do you have an interest of this? Do you want to be included? And more often than not, almost everybody, I think I've had one person say no. But everybody else is like, yeah, sure. Because I mean, I'm not stealing money from them. I'm not making money from this. This is more visibility. It's basically free advertising for them.
I know, it's like it's just another place on Amazon that makes it a lot easier for all I want to read right now is LitRPG. Let me submerge in all the possibilities.
Yes, and the possibilities are, they're super in depth. Also, every single one of these small press publishers I have talked to personally. The latest edition is Podium Audio, so all of their audiobooks are on here now. And the cool thing about these is that I can actually have their own banners up here. And so one of the things that I was noticing that even on some of the small press and publishers' websites, it's not always updated frequently with some of their books because, I mean, let's face it, they publish thousands of books. And so it takes time for them to get updated. But all they have to do is tell me, hey, we got a new release. And I can go ahead and put it onto the store. And if they take the link up top, if they post it in any kind of ad that does kind of thumbnails, it's going to show their banner in the rendering. And so basically, it's going to be pointing back to a Gamelit and LitRPG store for Podium Audio. And now people can actually find books by them, which is pretty awesome. And so it's one of those things that's a perfect resource for people to use and get more visibility. The last thing that I'll show you on the actual store before we go into the back end is that you can actually have merchandise on here too. So as long as it's an Amazon product that has an ASIN, you can basically add it here, right? So some of this is mine. Actually, the top one, I think, Domino Finn, maybe? Yeah, Domino. Okay, his name is on it. But yeah, so he has this kind of the E-Lit RPG for everyone t-shirt that he sells on Amazon. So the cool thing is like you can basically add all this stuff here. Now, I will caveat that right now with the whole Amazon shipping and COVID, a lot of the products are kind of unavailable, like you see with the shirt here. I was actually switching the way I was selling my paperbacks because I wanted to sell signed paperbacks out of the Amazon store. And I had to wait a month and a half before I could ship to the warehouse because they were only shipping medical supplies. So there's some things that are kind of unavailable right now. So if you do go on the merchandise, just, realize that you're not going to be able to get everything right away. So. Okay, so let's just dig into the back end here. So all of this is through my Amazon seller account. I don't really have anything sensitive here, so I don't really care if the world sees this. You'll probably see some metrics and numbers and stuff like that. I would ask that you just kind of keep it close hold because I'm not really publishing this to everybody. But the cool thing is I'm not telling you any one person or any one book that is selling certain things, right? So you're not really going to see a whole lot. In fact, most of the sales that you're going to see are on the homepage, which changes rapidly because there's so many releases. I would say within a given week, every single book on the homepage changes at least once. And so it really is spread across all of the different genres and subgenres of lit RPG. And so there's really no kind of like gaming or marketing advantage you can get by looking at these numbers. There are some things I could tell you that I could dig into, but I probably won't. But the cool thing is that every single author, every single publisher that is part of this, I have made all of these statistics, all of the traffic stats available to them at their request. And then periodically in various groups that I'm part of, I send regular updates. Hey, here's what the store is doing. Here's the traffic. Here's the pages that are doing well. And so that's just one of the things, the transparency things that I'm trying to do.
Okay. Build your relationship with those authors too and publishers. That's a good
I have a great relationship with really every author that I've talked to. So, there's not, I can't think of any one author that I've had the opportunity to kind of discourse with that we're at odds. And so like the cool thing about this, like I said, it's a hobby for me. So to me, the lit RPG genre succeeding as a whole is kind of a mission accomplishment for me. And so I'm happy to do this. I do put in a lot of work, probably takes away from my own writing, but sacrifices you got to make, which I'm okay doing. So, okay, so let's go to manage stores. I've got a couple of options here. First, I'm going to go through kind of the edit here so you guys can see some of the different things that you can do. As you can see, I have to change the banner because they don't like dates on the banner because they don't want to be time-sensitive sales. So I'll come back with various things like this. Hey, you got to fix this. You got to correct that. Whatever. I'll get it fixed. So this one here, I'm working with a lit RPG Russian group. A lot of the Russians, they have kind of like a representative. And so whether that representative is like their publisher or if it's the translator, what have you, this one happens to be the translator who kind of interfaces like 3 or 4 different authors that publish originally in Russian, translated to English. They send me the banners for these. Sometimes I'll make the banners, but for the most part, I request that authors, if they want a banner on the homepage, they create them themselves. They send them to me. I have a calendar where they can basically sign up for a new release day. They can then drop a banner itself into a drive folder that I have linked. So I've got all these things kind of set up for authors to do these on their own. Okay, so basically I can just add any page I want. I can title it whatever I want. I can do any kind of like display. I can do product grids. You'll see most of the things that I have on here are kind of grids, which it's easier to manage because if I'm choosing kind of custom layouts, I have to manually input every single ASIN into every single field. And if you have 3 books in a series and the 4th book comes out, well, now my entire layout got messed up and I have to go and redo all of it, delete stuff, change stuff. And so typically I do product grids, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like here on the pre-order page. So this is basically a product grid. Everything gets equal space. Every single book on here is in random order. In fact, even all of these sub pages, like VR Fantasy, if I click on this is all randomized. So the way I do it is I keep a spreadsheet of all the ASINs. In fact, I can probably show that to you. I don't think there's anything sensitive in that. All right, let's see. Now I lost my recording window. Okay, here you go. So let me go over to VR Fantasy. And so I basically have this just random number kind of function here. And so anytime I make a change in here, so like if a new book gets added or I add a new author series, every single one of these numbers gets changed. I just do a sort by, and then I copy and paste all of those directly into the store here. I can click on here. I can just copy and paste all of those ASINs in there. And so the way I have it laid out here is cool because if I have a series like Completionist Chronicles, for instance, and there's 4 or 5 books in a series, I just keep them all on the same line. So when I copy them into the store itself, they're all side by side. So you can see that all the series show up together. And then the series themselves are randomized on the page. And I do this so that every author gets kind of equal space. And so anytime there's an update or anything like that, they're all randomized and different books bubble to the top. Because some of these categories have hundreds of books in them. And I mean, if you look at all of the different polls and stuff that I've seen so far, like some of the polls that I've been in for different lit RPG groups, they do polls on, hey, who's your favorite author, who's your favorite book, or what's your favorite series. The reality is that most people stop at like line 20. And they don't scroll all the way to the bottom. And unfortunately, my book tends to be kind of the bottom, like 2/3. So I don't really get a whole lot of visibility there. The same is true of these stores, right? If there's hundreds of products on a page, what are the chances that somebody's going to scroll to the bottom? And so I want to make sure that I'm getting everybody kind of equal space. And so all of these are randomized every time I put them in there. Okay, so on the homepage itself, I only list like the top 10 books. Not top 10, excuse me, the most recent 10 books in chronological order. So as new releases come out, as long as the author that I've previously dealt with, I'll basically pull their new release in, and then they get the top of the page space. And I'll do this every time there's a new release coming out for authors that have agreed to be on the page. And so, yeah, so other things that I can do is basically you can have these subcategories. So you have your top level, then you have a subcategory, and that's as far as you can go. You can only go down a depth of 2. So if you want to get really jinky with these things, you really can't, right? You're stuck with these 2 levels. And so that's fine though. And it's created some problems, like I mentioned, the whole harem category and wanting to do kind of like an adult, then harem, then reverse harem. How do you do that if you don't have multiple subcategories? So that's been kind of a problem that I'm trying to deal with now. But I think there's enough freedom here that it's okay to kind of play with it until I find something that works. And then I'll show you kind of what else I can do here. I think Shadow Alley has a pretty decent setup. So yeah, so this is kind of a different layout, right? I showed you the grid, but now I can actually go and say, hey, maybe there's 7 books in a series, and maybe I just want to do a 7-book spread. And then the downside of these is that when I actually publish it, I have to hand jam the actual titles and the descriptions myself. For whatever reason, they don't get ported in from Amazon. And so I try not to do this because, like I said, it takes time. Every single one of these squares means I have to manually click it, copy and paste the ASN in. And then if James comes out or releases book 8, now I have to read this entire spread. And so I try to avoid that where I can. I really love the covers of the Viridian Gate series, and so I wanted to do it this way just because it looks awesome. And so so when you scroll through this, you're just like, wow, these are pretty awesome. But you can see I can like juxtapose the actual Kindle book and the audiobook. So if people have a preference for one or the other, I could do that as well. So there's a lot of different cool things that you can do here. In fact, one of the really neat things that I think a lot of authors would find intriguing about this is that I can create these sponsored brand ads. And these are different from like your normal Amazon ads. They are specific to any product that is listed on the store itself. And there's a little bit of kind of hacking Amazon here that I don't think most people realize you can do. And I'm going to show you how to do one of these before I get into the metrics, because to me this was really interesting. Let's see. Let's just do. Okay, so I can do this new product list page, and what this means is that I can choose any. Let's see. Let's do. Let me just do my books.
So he's showing us how to, for those on audio, you should really be watching this live, because he's showing us how to do a new secret ad thing that none of us probably even knew existed. So I'm excited.
Okay, so you see here, audiobooks are ineligible, right? That's been one of the biggest downsides of doing Amazon ads is you cannot advertise audio. But there is a hack, and I'm going to show you the hack. And hopefully Amazon isn't watching this because they might remove the hack, and hopefully that doesn't happen. But I'm just going to show you this for the sake of showing it to you right now. So I'm going to choose 2 of my books, and then I'm going to preview. We got to have 3 books. Let's add this.
And you're choosing ebooks?
So these ones are print books.
Okay.
And then the top one here is the ebook. But what is it saying here? Oh, I got to have unique stuff. Well, I'm just going to add some random thing that I don't even know what it is. See if that okay. So this is the new product list page, and this is cool because if I wanted to run ads for an author or some other publisher, I could basically create this custom landing page that includes only their products. So this is still part of the store technically, but if somebody clicks on the ad, it's going to only redirect them to their products, which is really cool, something that you could do. So I've thought about ways where I could get other authors in here in some kind of advertising thing, having somebody else manage it. I even talked to some third-party ad companies to see if this is something they'd be willing to manage, because as a seller, I can actually appoint people to manage the campaigns and ads. And so there's some marketing firms out there that will do this, in which case they take on the liability of the clients, the money handling and things like that, because I don't want anything to do with that. I just want this to be kind of a resource. And if other authors want to take advantage, they can. So that's one thing you can do. So let me back up, and I'm going to show you the hack. All right, so I can have my logo here, which for my ads I do. But if, like, for instance, I was advertising on behalf of somebody else, for instance, I've worked with Mountaindale Press, so Danielle and Dakota. And Danielle, I gave her access to do some ads, and so she was doing some kind of testing with their own sponsored brand ads with their own logo. So I can change this. I can change the handle. I mean, I could change this to whatever I wanted to. I could change the logo itself, and then it's just like creating a normal ad. But here's the kicker. So you see it says ineligible for these audiobooks, right? But if I click on it, it renders in my ad. And so even though it doesn't allow me to click the radial, I could still click on the product. And when I actually publish the ad, I am publishing in marketing audiobooks. So yeah, it's interesting. I kind of stumbled on this on accident, but if you see any of my ads come up, which I'm not running any currently, I've had time to kind of test them lately, but if you see any of them come up, I've got my 2 Kindle books, and then I've got the audiobook. And so hopefully soon I'll have audiobook number 2 out, which is going to be publishing soon. And then, yeah, I'll be able to advertise all the audio, which is pretty awesome, because I don't know anywhere else on Amazon you can actually advertise your audiobooks. So that's pretty cool.
Now, this is a separate question, but you know how Amazon sends you emails to suggest books and to suggest, here's from an author you like. Do you know how you can get on such emails?
If you go to the author's page, you can follow the author, and then when you publish something new, you'll get an email. Now, there's kind of a mystery behind this, because for some authors, you get a notification right away. Hey, they just published something, you got it. But other authors, it takes like weeks or months. And so some speculate that it's like number of sales, or how popular you are, or how high your ranking is. And so, I mean, obviously they don't want to inundate you with email after email after email.
Right.
So there's like some sort of criteria that it matches. And I'm not sure that anybody knows the real answer of what that criteria is.
So if you're an author, you can encourage your fans to follow you on Amazon, and then they'll get those emails.
In fact, Amazon used to have a giveaway program, and they got rid of the giveaway, where you could basically give copies of your book away. And one of the things you could encourage people to do is actually follow your author page. And that was one way they could sign up to win the raffle for your book. And that was like an actual Amazon thing. But as far as I understand it, they got rid of the giveaways on Amazon, so you can't really do that anymore.
Yeah.
So it's just like hitting our subscribe button and our bell, so you can hear more from KSM and know when we have live videos going on. Oh yeah,
exactly like that.
Shameless advertising.
No harm in shamelessly plugging.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go over to the insights now. And so again, obviously try to keep this close hold if you can. It's not anything secret or sensitive or anything like that. But here you can get an idea of kind of the traffic itself. So this is just a 30-day snapshot. But you can start to see like which pages are being visited the most. You can see the home, you can see the pre-order, and you'll see things like post-apocalyptic. Now, the reason that's there is because there was a whole slew of posts on Facebook that says, hey, I want to read books like X. And it just happened to be post-apocalyptic books that have an altered reality theme. And so I shared a bunch of links in different Facebook posts. And so naturally, you're going to see more traffic gravitate towards there. In fact, like a really kind of important thing to note here is that I don't advertise this anywhere. I'm not doing any kind of paid ads on Facebook, on Amazon, or anything like that. It's all word of mouth. And that's very evident, actually, because I recently got into a Dungeon Core group led by Jonathan Brooks and a couple of other guys. And they didn't know about the store. And so I got into the group and I said, hey, did you guys know about this? All of your books are here. You've told me you want to be on it, but I don't see you talking about it in this group. And so they actually started kind of doing some organic pushing of this inside the group itself. And if you look at that 1 month when we started doing that, the Dungeon Core sales just like skyrocketed.
Yeah.
So this is it. It requires organic word of mouth in order to get this out. And you can see here, just by posting on some Facebook posts where people are asking for this type of book, you can see the sales naturally kind of trend upward. And so that's cool. You can see some things like that. I could create individual source tags if I wanted to. So if I was sharing this on Twitter or Facebook or some other medium, I could create a tag that says, hey, this is a source from XYZ. Or if you're an author here, you wanted a specific source tag for your website, so you could see how much traffic is driving from your website here. I could do all of that too. There's also, if you actually go to the store page itself at the very bottom, there's the option to share on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. And then when that happens, there's some UTM tracking in there. So when it does get to me, I can say, hey, this is a direct result of some Twitter shares or some Pinterest shares. And so there's some cool metrics that you can get there. The downside here is that I cannot tell you what book was bought. It is impossible to get that level of granularity unless the page itself only has one book on it. That is the only way that you could say this book is actually selling, which is why you see that homepage is kind of like the predominant seller there, because it's all the new releases. People want to buy the new releases. They're coming here to see the new releases because they keep on top of it. And a lot of times it gets drowned out on Facebook because there's so much activity there, right? And so you can see here that people are just coming here, looking at the new releases. Oh, that looks interesting. Let me pick that up. And so I can't really tell you what genre sells best, right? It's impossible from this, but it does show you that this is enabling sales for other authors. That was really kind of the goal behind this, and readers are using this to find the books that they want to read. And I think overall sales revenue at this point is right around like 14 or 15,000 so far since I started this. And that is all money in other authors' pockets. I've probably seen maybe a couple hundred of that. And so because when I first got the store, I've only had a few books. Most of them were mine. And so I got some sales initially. But now my books are randomized on the page just like everybody else's. And so that's basically, this is kind of like a community effort here where I'm trying to, drive that value back. The community helped me get started. And so this is a contribution back to them to say, hey, this is what I'm doing for you. And so it's working really well. So, I mean, I can go through these different things. You can see the different traffic. You can see the different pages, what people are visiting. You can see Dungeon even still is like the highest visited page outside the homepage. Maybe not as many sales because maybe people already bought the books they want to read. And you can see here, like if I do have an Amazon brand ad that drives people here, I'll get the revenue results there. The downside of this is like I could pay for the ad and it could be advertising my books, but if they click on my logo instead of the book itself, it goes to the homepage and they could buy somebody else's book. So I could be basically paying for other authors advertising in order to buy their books, which, I mean, it happens. I can't really do anything about it, but it is what it is. I could track individual stats by day, how many orders there are, different sales. I can go on individual pages to see how the traffic is. And again, here's the source. So I can go and say, okay, look, 13 visits from Twitter. Like I said, I don't do a whole lot of advertising for this other than when people ask for books. Most of the time when people, readers say, I want a book like this, authors share their own product page. I share the store. And so as much as I want to sell my own book, I want to get more recognition for the store. And so I'll share the AR post-apocalypse category, which is where my book is, rather than a product link to my page. And then if they want to buy my book, awesome. But I'd rather drive more people here because it helps everybody. And again, this is a hobby for me. So any kind of income here is kind of supplemental.
Well, this genre is so new that readers need a place to go. They need a home, and it looks like you created it here. One thing I'm really excited about your genre, and I'm happy that you're supporting it, is that I feel like new readers who don't really read other novels at all, but maybe game a lot or have other entertainment forms, might be drawn into reading for the first time or first time in a long time. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's a lot of gamers. I would say that probably 90% of the authors in the literary genre are hardcore gamers. That's just what we are. I basically gamed my entire life, and so I would say that I'm not as hardcore as I used to be because I have kids. But most of my gaming now I do on my phone because I can take it with me. Which, I mean, you can't play some of the games, I get that, but I'm still pretty hardcore into gaming. So I think it's just kind of a nature of being in this genre, being able to write in this genre. There's been a number of kind of right-to-market authors that have tried to come in here and shoehorn their own books into this. And the reality is you can't write a fantasy novel and just lay or slap game stuff on top of it. It just doesn't work. And you will be lambasted, and like the reviews will show it and be like, hey, this is not a lit RPG. This is basically somebody trying to add stats to something that doesn't need them. Really, the core of this genre is about the game mechanics. If you don't have the game mechanics inherently part of your world that allow your story to progress, then you're not going to be successful in this genre. It's just not going to happen. But again, like this doesn't have to be specific to lit RPG. Actually, one of the things that I like to show, I did a demo of this for Podium. Is it Brimmer? Who is it?
Okay, while he is looking for that, I'm going to quickly do our weekly spotlight. This week's spotlight is on Invasion Day. They Came for Blood by Scott Moon. David Osage is a dangerous man with a dangerous past, but these days he's just trying to keep his head down, driving big rigs. One night he saddles himself with a hitchhiker, a nuisance who's more than she seems, and that's when everything changes. No one was ready for an alien invasion. Death is raining from the sky, and the only question left is, do you run, fight, or submit? For David Osage and his family, answering is as easy as giving the alien invaders the finger. Get your copy today of Doom. Yay! Doom.
Okay.
And that is Scott Moon's book. It released last Friday, and I'm very excited to see it succeed.
Yes. I hear good things.
I found it. Okay, so this is completely unrelated to lit RPG, but I just wanted to show you how you could use this store for your own brand. So obviously these products have nothing to do with Jeremy Renner, right? He is not like a spokesperson, and he does not own the Jack Link's beef jerky brand, right? But what this is basically showing that he is an outdoorsman. And these are the products that he uses when he goes camping, when he goes out. These are the things he would recommend. And this is kind of an example of how you could use this to brand your own store. And there's a lot of really cool different brand things that you can do. In fact, if you go to like the store settings themselves, you can specify like your logo and stuff. And so you'll see here that I don't show my logo because I want this to be game lit RPG specific. If I wanted to use it for brand, I could turn this on, and I could change this to Hummel Books, which would be my publisher's mark. And then I could create an actual banner that indicates this is my brand. And you could use this to tailor it specifically to you. But the idea for me is creating this as kind of like a community thing. So I've had conversations with other folks, like, is there a way to do this for other genres, other book genres? And there might be. But for instance, if you go to amazon.com/horror, you're actually brought to a horror page. If you go to amazon.com/romance, you're brought to a romance page. How do you get those genres or into kind of a community page? You probably can't because the vanity URL is already taken. So maybe you could create it for your author brand itself. So like if you are a publisher or if you're an author, maybe you could have amazon.com/Richard Hummel. And you could claim those and have that kind of like brand recognition for yourself. But to actually get kind of a genre tag would be pretty rare. In fact, most of them Amazon would probably decline, but because they're not recognizing this as a genre, I was able to do it. And so it's my hope that eventually they'll be able to see like, hey, this is actually a thing. And then maybe they just take over my store. I don't know. Or maybe they say, hey, we're going to actually have this redirect. We'll see what happens. But it's my hope eventually that Amazon catches on and realizes that something like this needs to happen.
Well, by the looks of how many authors, publishers, audiobook publishers, all the things that are just in the few lists that you showed us, I mean, there's hundreds and thousands more. So I don't see why they wouldn't.
I think at this point, every small press, publisher, and audiobook producer that really does anything in this genre is now part of the store. There might be maybe one or two like smaller boutiques that have like one or two novels published that are not here, but pretty much most of them are part of this movement at this point. And every single person that I've talked to says it's a reality that this is something that's needed. In fact, I was talking to Tantor, and if you go to their website and you search Game Lit or Lit RPG, you get about 35 titles. But they have over 115 titles in the genre because they themselves don't even necessarily know how to tag them because it's this thing that it's in between genres. And so it might be in a fantasy category or a sci-fi category, but that doesn't help Lit RPG readers find it. And obviously this is a kind of a hot market. So you want readers to be able to find your stuff. And if they have to search through tens of thousands of fantasy books to find it, they're not going to find them.
So how do you use it on your author end to build your brand? Maybe that question sounds really obvious, but like, do you have a newsletter? Do you have a Facebook group? Are you getting word out? And how are you using the store itself to expand your readership base?
So right now, it's more about just kind of getting this out there. I mean, the hope is that this garners goodwill in the community, right? And so you've seen all the authors on here. Like, the good thing about this community is that if you know the authors well and you're friends with the authors, they will help you market your own stuff. And that happens all the time. And I've had the fortunate luck to have a lot of the bigger authors in the genre that have taken my promotion post and be like, hey, check out this book. Which has really helped me get a lot of visibility. And so, I mean, that's, for me, this is giving back to that community and helping those other authors. And that generates more goodwill, right? They've done it for me, now I'm doing it for them. It's kind of really this cycle thing that I want to continue because there's so many genres out there where you have cutthroat authors and they don't work well together and you don't talk about them in certain circles. And that's not really the case for the most part in Lit RPG. There are some cliques, there has been some schisms, but for the most part, like the vast majority of the authors are pretty, buddy-buddy with each other, with the exception of, a couple authors that I won't name. But
always,
for the most part, it's a really good community. So
I think that's like the heart of Keystroke Medium is like find a way to give back and give back. Find a need and need it.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to give back, and the reality, like the readers pay your bills, right? Especially if you're full time. And so if you can create something that readers want to use and that this is their go-to, why wouldn't you, right? And even if you're not getting the bulk of the sales, you are driving other readers and other interests into this genre, which naturally is going to lift your own books up when people start reading others types and other different subcategories. And so, yeah, you might not see a massive increase, but I don't have to pay for this either, right? This just with being able to have a registered brand. So it's not like I'm paying a whole lot of money. The only thing I do pay for is a $40 a month, which is my Amazon professional seller account. And that's it. $40 a month is nothing. And so I do a lot more with Amazon than just the store. The store itself costs nothing, but if I want to do some of the more advanced stuff, some of the more professional things, like I've got signed paperback copies in the warehouse right now. I don't have to pay for storage. They can sit there as long as they want. And so that's kind of where the $40 a month comes in. Is basically it covers fees and stuff like that, which I'm okay paying because I'm still making a profit on other stuff. And so this is free. So it's just basically time and effort on my part to be able to get the books in here. So I do have a newsletter. I have a Facebook group. I have a Facebook page. I have a Discord. Any number of things. You can go to my Amazon page. I've got all the links there. Anybody can join. But yeah, so as much as I would like this to be my own brand, I would much prefer it to be a community brand. Just to be clear, I'm not saying that the Game Lit or Lit RPG are mine, right? Not at all. This is literally a genre. I'm not claiming any ownership whatsoever of it. One other thing to mention too is that I also own the vanity URLs for Amazon.mx, Amazon.ca, Amazon.au, pretty much every single regional marketplace of Amazon. I have the rights to the vanity URL for Amazon.com/LitRPG. The problem is you cannot copy and paste from one store to the other. I would have to manually go and recreate every single page, every description, every title, everything on all like 8 or 9 different marketplaces.
You gotta find someone else out there who also loves lit RPG who can do this for you for the love.
I have considered hiring a virtual assistant, but again, because I make no money, this is something out of my pocket that I don't really want to pay right now. So I have them. I just haven't done anything with them yet. So,
well, another benefit that just occurred to me is the extreme lack of ads. Like
there are 0 ads.
Yeah, exactly. I know. You send someone to like the Amazon page for the book, and it's just like ads. It's like on steroids with the ads.
Right.
Like, here's your book, and here's like,
a
website in and of itself that is just selling books. So I mean,
I added this actually. I wanted them to have some recommended books at the bottom that match what's in the homepage. But if you go to the page, there is nothing at the bottom. So even though as much as I told them, hey, yeah, you can add some like relevant ads at the bottom, it's empty.
Also bots down there.
So I don't know what that little widget is for, but it never recommends anything. It's just a very clean page, just books, nothing else, which is pretty awesome. So
you're the only other author I know besides Galaxy's Edge that has a Discord channel where your fans.
There is a lot of Discord channels.
I need to meet these people.
If you go into my Discord channel, I have a separate channel that lists all the other authors' Discord channels. So you can go and mass join all of those channels. There's probably like 20 or 25 different channels there. So
what gave you the idea to do that, and how do you use it to
again, I mean, just giving back. So I list, I don't even know what I all have anymore. I'm not super active in my own Discord, it's sad to say, but life is busy. So I list author Patreon pages, their websites, their Amazon pages, Royal Road authors. I have a list of like editors that people have recommended, a list of narrators that people recommend, different artists, other Discord channels, Twitter handles to follow for various authors, newsletter signups, so on and so forth. So I've got channels for all these things, and you can basically go in there and kind of sub at your heart's whim.
So you just share all kinds of information that you think people may want, and then they can talk about it, they can chat about it, they can meet other people, and oh, that's awesome. I love that. That's a very cool idea.
But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I've got. So I don't know if there's questions that hopefully I answered all of the original questions. I think I did, but
you did, yeah. You just blazed through them. I love that.
Okay.
Keelan, got any more questions?
No, I was just looking through here, and I'm like, no, he talked about that. He talked about that right there. No, I think before we could even answer him, you're just like, carry on, which is awesome because that's just makes it easier for us. But yeah, thank you so much for joining, and I am sorry for my 10-minute tirade of microphone-ness.
All good.
That clearly needs to go back to the store because obviously it's a piece of shit. Anyway, I had to get my old one out. Anyway. Thank you for coming. Everybody, thank you for listening, viewing. If you are new to Keystroke Medium at the YouTubiness, come join us on Facebook. We have our group, Keystroke Medium. We're the only one out there. You can Google us, all the things. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, ding the little bell. And if you're only listening, come join us live. We will answer your questions. We'll wave at you, do little dances, all that good stuff. Alrighty, for Lauren, no, you're over here. Lauren Moore and the Keystroke Medium family. I am Kayleen Williams. Thank you for joining us on your Thursday evening. Be sure to check us out next time. We're going to talk about more reading, writing, and everything in between right here on Keystroke Mediums, The Writer's Journey. Good night, guys.